Okay, folks, today it is my pleasure to be joined by Humphrey Ker, the executive director of Wrexham Football Club. It is an honor, as I just said to you off camera. I am fully sort of invested in what's been going on with this club, which I know that a lot of soccer fans from our side of the pond are. My entire football group chat, if not watching all the games, will keep up with, oh, the score is this. They won by this much. They lost by that much. And I think that that's such a incredible development for sort of where football has become over the course of my adult life. I started watching in 2017. Okay, so let's wind the clocks back to that year. You travel back in time, and you tell yourself, Humphrey, you're going to be basically running a football club in Wales in 6 years' time. What's the first thing that comes out of 2017 U's mouth?
I've probably just like come off it. What are you talking about? Like how on earth would any of that come to pass? And then then we probably get into that classic time travel thing of like, okay, well, who wins the FA Cup in 2020? We can put a big bet on it, or something of that nature. Yeah, it's been a crazy journey, and I mean, at 2017, I suppose I was. What was I doing then? I auditioning as an actor and as a writer. I was writing scripts and things, trying to get them made. But 2017 actually was. It's funny you picked that year. That was my banner bad year. I earned $3,000 that year,
Wow.
and was living off residuals and stuff that I'd made in previous years. But I just could not get arrested in 2017 in my regular day job. So yeah, it's funny that's the year you picked. I often use that as like that was the moment I was like, you know what, I'm going to give up. I'm going to become a history teacher. Not that being a history teacher is giving up, but giving up my
You
dreams as
have
a
that look, I
writer.
must say. I must say,
Thank you.
you've got the
I'll
look for
take
that
it.
career.
I will take it. I'll take it. Yes, I show you my Viking tattoo in the background and my weird collection of nautical flags behind me. Yeah, it's been a crazy journey, and I'm very excited to be here.
I just started Mythic Quest this past summer, and I saw
Right.
you pop up, and it finally occurred to me sort of the way in which these events must have unfolded. So talk to me about that big bang moment of you and Rob just talking football. And what was that first conversation about? I think it was touched on at some point. He saw you at work, like, and you had a game on. Do you remember
Yeah.
what game? Do you remember what the conversation was?
Totally, yeah. So that was 2019, and Liverpool making a run to the Champions League final that year. And so
I'm a
off
big red.
there you go. You see, correct choice. I'll say the two teams, Wrexham and Liverpool, both playing red. It can't be a coincidence. It's the correct color. Yeah, we were. I was watching quite a lot of Liverpool's games that period because they would start at 8 p.m., which is 12 p.m. PST for us when we were working in the writers' room, and that was when our lunch break was. So I would watch, in that hour, that basically the first half and a half time of those Champions League games, and have to switch it off and get back to work. And Rob would sort of peer over my shoulder and always be like, "Oh, it's boring. They don't score enough. There's not enough points. Like all they do is flop all the time," which is something that always makes me laugh because it's such a classic criticism of football. And then every time I watch a basketball game, it's like everyone seems to flop in basketball as well,
Football too.
but no one gets it
NFL
right.
as well. They're doing it too.
It's just part of sport in general, is trying to gull the referee in some way, shape, or form or another. But yeah, he kind of was not that into it until lockdown started. I got him to watch Sunderland Till I Die, which is a Netflix documentary, which is great if you haven't seen it.
Fantastic. Yep.
And I'm here to plug a different documentary, but that one is also good. If you run out of our episodes. And yeah, what started out is it felt like very much one of those conversations you have with a friend in a bar, like, oh, we should do this, we should do that, da, da, da. And what I should have realized is that Rob is someone who just is like, can't sit still, can't do nothing, and being faced with who knows how long sitting doing nothing, he was like, I got to do something. I'm going to buy a soccer team. And lo and behold, he did, and here we are 3 years later.
So I'm kind of jump around a bit because you mentioned 2019, which is the year, the greatest soccer game I've ever watched ever in my entire life. Liverpool
Yes.
4, Barcelona 0.
Barcelona 0.
First,
Yeah.
was that the game that he caught?
Yeah, that was not. No, he didn't actually see that one. And I think I'm being genuinely honest here, because I think in the past in interviews I've been like, yeah, no, I think it was that one. I don't think it was. I think it was actually the Bayern Munich game away was the one that in particular, I went crackers when Mane scored that incredible goal. I'm sure you remember well, that like long ball, and he brought it down and like turned sort of on a sixpence and like wrong-footed Manny Neuer and like lifted it over him. And I went
And then
crackers.
Salah just desperately trying to stop himself from stealing that goal.
Yes. Yeah, and that was the thing, that I think what it was that we were all sitting around talking about whatever, and I would have my laptop on silent, like in front of me. And I think when we scored that goal, I just went like, "Rah, ah," like absolutely crazy. And everyone was like, "Oh my God, what is happening over there?" Like, what possibly could elicit that kind of reaction? And he was aware of it then, but no, he didn't, because I remember I watched that Barcelona game at my friend Sam's house in London, because I guess I was in the UK at that stage for some reason. And obviously that's such a core, as you say, the greatest game that I've ever watched. I remember every element of watching that game.
Well, so that is my point. I want to talk about your team, not mine. So that's my game, right? That is I could remember where I was, what I was wearing, how loud I yelled, not counting the Foster save, not counting match last year. What is that game for you so far during your time at this club? And would it be nuts if I didn't say you can't choose that?
It might be, because that was just so crazy and such an emotional release. And like I mean, I screamed myself hoarse at I'm actually really looking forward to seeing the episode about that day, because it was such a kind of blur in some ways.
Yeah.
It was such a kind of feeling of being part of something nuts that I quite want to see what the camera caught of that. But I would say, other than that, there's actually another game that I know is featured in this season of the documentary, which was the game right after that, or maybe it was the game after the game. I think it was the game after the game after that. So spoiler alert: we beat Notts County towards the end of the season. That set us up for this. Right? Okay, well, it's in our hands. We got to win. We've got 4 games left. If we can just get 7 points from these 4 games, we're guaranteed. If Notts County drop more points, it might be easier. But as long as
I want to add the context of this being a 6-pointer.
Yeah, so that was post the 6-pointer. We then drew the next game 0-0, and it was like that was not part of the plan. It was supposed to be, let's go win that game, keep the pressure up. And we came back to the race course and played Yeovil, who were in danger of relegation. But after about 55 minutes, it was 0-0 again, and the whole stadium was getting very antsy and very stressed and very nervous, myself included. And at that point, one of our players stepped up, scored a rather unusual figure to score a goal, stepped up and scored a goal. And it was the culmination of, he'd had like just a really difficult time for the last couple of months off the pitch. And he came back into the side for the first time. He hadn't been training for about a month and a half because of some family issues. Came back in, scored the goal that basically set us on the path to, like, it kind of, all the stress went out of the place. We won 3-0. And that was the moment where I was like, it's done. Like, we need to get 3 points from our last 2 games. We're definitely going to do it, either here or away from home. And so that was a really great night for me personally. And I know that they cover that quite extensively in the doc, because it's a pretty extraordinary story.
And now, is that one in the same of when, I would hope it occurred to you a bit sooner, but when was the moment? Because I could imagine, right? There are times where you probably just want to curl up in a ball and say to yourself, what the fuck did I get into? And then Absolutely. At times where it truly crystallizes what, not so much what, but why you got into this.
Yes.
Are there games that sort of define those feelings for you? The one that made you think, I'm going back to writing, or the one that made you think, you know what, I get this now?
Well, we lost 5-0 on Saturday, and that was definitely a moment where I was like, oh God, that puts a real, that ruins your weekend and your week. What are we on now? It's Monday evening, and I'm still smarting from that. But no, do you know what? I mean, weirdly, it's not even so much the games that make me feel like this is I'm so glad I'm doing this. It's more just those interactions with folk from and in the town who, have loved this football club their whole lives. I'm new to this. I only got into Wrexham in sort of the spring of 2020, and talking to people who are like, I've been coming here for 60 years. It's been mostly, of those 60 years, about 55 of them have sucked for one reason or another. But the last 3 years have been the most fun 3 years of the whole thing. I mean, truly, you are talking to like 60, 70-year-old people who'll come up to me in the car park and be like, I'm just having fun. This is so fun. And it hasn't been a lot of fun for a while. And that feels really special. That's the thing. I mean, it sounds kind of corny in a way, but
it sounds corny if you don't get the sport. If you don't understand the sport to the extent that we do, it sounds very cliched. But when and this is why I think this doc is and I just want to say this as a point. The fact that Ryan Reynolds and Rob have become two of the shepherds of football in the States is such an unbelievable development. But your doc is the first time that I, huge football fan, have heard of Article 48. I always knew what it was, but I never had it. So I think the more you understand how and this sounds corny too, it's more than just a game. It's a way of life for these towns. They live and die off of, literally the towns live and die off of how well the club is doing. So I don't think that that's corny. I think that genuine fans of the sport understand exactly your thought there.
100%. And I also think, you know, when you look at sport in the US, there are equally those people, you know. I like baseball. I like the Red Sox, and you know, I know for the people of Boston, when they like reversed the curse, like what an outpouring of emotion that is, and how tied up it is with people. I remember watching the documentary. I think it's called 4 Days in September or something. All about when they went 3 games down,
October,
4 nights in October. Yes. When they went 3 games down,
that's
in the ALCS.
The second sports doc that you've plugged that's not yours.
I know, yeah. Well, I like sports docs, they're good. But yeah, you saw in that people saying, like, my dad lived and died as a Red Sox fan, never saw them win a championship. You know, like, he spent his whole life just suffering. And you know, I think that's something that's common to, you know, if you like sport, if you support a team, if you get the magic and wonder of any sport at all, you'll enjoy this documentary. You'll enjoy seeing people, that cathartic release, which, spoiler alert, in season 2, I think you're going to get to see a little bit of people breaking their long curse.
You lead me into a point that I brought up to Wayne Jones, and it came out of my own personal time going to Liverpool in 2019. After it was the Anfield match against Spurs, where that like own goal sort of like trickled in at the end, and I was like, all right, something magic is going on. I've got to get there. So I booked the trip within like 2 months, went on my own, and sort of I figure like, oh, I'm going to be called Yankee, this and that. The way that the culture so fully embraced me and was so stoked over the fact that like I literally packed up my shit and came to just hang out. You know, they loved that so much. So I asked Wayne this, and I would love to hear your point of view as both a fan and somebody who is literally a executive in the sport. How is the town coping with, you know, Wayne said that some of the fans were upset that the preseason went a bit too long and they wish that they had come home sooner. Right. That, of course, is the flip side of the coin of having celebrity owners and a club who is growing. So I'm curious how the town is coping with what used to be inherently and solely theirs, now becoming effectively a global product.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I've been so impressed by how gracious and like welcoming people from Wrexham have been. You know, there's so many stories. I mean, I literally today saw a story of a guy. There's a guy called Joe, who is an American fan who has become obsessed, and he's been to Wrexham like 3 or 4 times in the last couple of years. He's perennially there, and he bought a GoPro for this lady, Millie Tipping, who's one of our fans who featured pretty heavily in the second episode of this season of the documentary. She's a young woman. She's autistic. She's a Wrexham obsessive. Comes to every game, knows all the players, does everything. She makes these blogs and vlogs of her trips. And Joe bought her a GoPro and brought it with her in hand. And like these connections, these friendships, these like relationships that are building between international fans and local fans are extraordinary. I keep meeting people again in the car park who'll say, oh, you know, I got chatting to someone on Twitter, one of the local fans, and you know, we just became friends. And anyway, he invited me over, and me and my wife stayed in his house. He picked us up from the airport. We stayed in his house this weekend, going to the game tomorrow. He sorted us out with tickets, and then we're going up to Liverpool to do the Beatles tour, and then we fly back to Pittsburgh or wherever it is on Monday. And you know, the Wrexham fans have been so welcoming, but that doesn't surprise me, because when I first arrived as quite an outsider, as not from Wrexham, didn't work in football, little bit of a like, who's this guy? Why is he here? Everybody was so friendly to me and so welcoming, and just sort of, I think when you have a passion for something that someone else shares that passion, there's an instant connection there where you're like, you can't really get too mad at somebody if they're like, well, you love this, I love this as well. You know, you know already you're going to like hit it off to a certain extent, and that's been proven time and again.
So we've got to start to wind down here. I want to make sure I squeeze in these last 2. Let's talk about your episode, which is effectively about all the stuff that went wrong with you in charge. I'm sorry to put it that way.
Sure.
That's just that's just how it was.
It's not quite how
really,
I would describe it, Eric, but yes, I see how you would get to that. Yeah.
Let's talk about the blip that stirred up all that shit. I'm the type of guy that could sense the exact moment that a bad idea starts going south, and I see you standing on that pitch looking white as a ghost, man. I felt so sorry for you, because I know that feeling of like, this is stupid, why are we doing this, so just walk me through like when that sort of wave of, oh man, this is so fucking stupid, crashed over you, and what that felt like of, oh, it's not like I wrote a bad joke. Like there are like government and provincial like stakes here. Yeah.
Well, the thing is that as executive director, my name is on, I am legally liable for lots of things that the football club does.
So you're the one who shows up in court.
Yes, basically. It's been made clear to me that if things go wrong, I go to jail, and they, they swan off into the sunset. So no, I mean, my big thing with it really, because it's very genuine, as people will see when they watch the episode, you can see I am genuinely like, why is this thing here? I wish we weren't doing this. Like, please God, can this go away? It's more actually born out of, I feel a huge sense of responsibility to the fans of the club, to the ethos of the club. Like, this is a serious football organization. We're here to win games. We're here to represent the town of Wrexham. It's not a joke. It's not a prank. It's not like, it's to be taken really seriously. So I'm always looking to protect like the dignity of the football club. And so, yeah, when that first arrived, I was like, this is undignified. And it's, there was a plan, which I don't think even necessarily shows up, but you might remember from the time, Rob had also made a giant inflatable version of Ryan's face for the players to run out of, that they could stick over the tunnel. So when you
I do make, yeah,
like at college football games or football games, sometimes they have like a giant helmet, and the players will run out of the inflatable helmet at the start of the game. He wanted them to do that in our game on the Tuesday night, which was against, I think, Halifax or something like that. And I just was like, please, I beg you, do not make our players run out of an inflatable Ryan head on a match day. Like that's sacrosanct. And so I couldn't defeat the blimp, but I defeated the inflatable head. It got used in a commercial or in the video for Ryan's birthday, I think, that Rob had made. And yeah, the giant blimp with Ryan's acid scarred face was flown over the racecourse, and actually then of course everyone in town thought it was great and loved it, and I was like, oh, I was being too precious about things. People get the joke, and they realize it's done in a spirit of fun.
So the final one here, and I understand that your literal job, maybe you have a pre-packaged response that you have when you get asked this sort of thing, but I really want to get into what we've sort of been talking about this whole time, and that's the Humphrey inside of you that can't believe that this is his life right now. Okay. When you're laying in bed at night and it's that moment where your mind wanders off to far spots, you're thinking of things that you didn't even know were possible to think about. In those times, where do you see this Wrexham journey ending, both for the club and for you?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, at the start of this process, I was often the brakes. Rob was the gas. Ryan was the passenger, and I was one going, well, I don't know if that will happen, or let's just lower expectations. As time has gone on, we really have, our rise has been kind of stratospheric. I mean, in terms of, we've only gone up one division, but in terms of our commercial opportunities, the interest, the merchandising sales, the this, that, and the other, all that has been crazy. And that has definitely left me going, I don't see why this club couldn't get to the Premier League. Like, ultimately, often it's a case of like, if you have more resources than other teams, you tend to do better than them. And by and large, the resources that we have are growing exponentially in a crazy way. And I can absolutely see this football club being in the Premier League. As for what that does for me, at a certain point, the idea that I may have to be in like the box with Sir Kenny Dalglish making polite small talk, I can very much get behind that. So
I'm going to say we do still need a full-time director of football.
That's way beyond the scope of my understanding. One of the things that where I think we have been successful so far is recognizing our limitations. Rob and Ryan and I, we do not know how to pick a footballer, right? We don't know how to, break down a tactical analysis of Crawley Town and be like, this is how you beat Crawley Town. So we're going to, employ people who do know how to do that, resource them, support them, and say, go for it. You've got our backing. That's the plan.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for your time. This was a great chat. I really just admire the journey that your career has been on. As I said, the fact that Ryan and Rob are shepherds for a game that I love, they are pushing this sport forward more than more than anything or one that I've ever seen. So for you being a part of that, thank you as well. Everybody, not only is Welcome to Wrexham a fantastic sports doc, it is truly one of my favorite shows on TV. Thank you so much, sir, and
Eric,
great luck this year.
Thank you, man.